Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well this Saturday morning. Good afternoon, good evening, good night, as Makini would say. Oh, we have so much to talk about today. I want to start out by saying thank you guys for joining me. This is like 12 people already. My goodness. Thanks for being here. Yeah, I am wearing hearts. Sultan. Hey guys. So we're gonna start out with a short discussion about Boba Fett, and we're going to then get into my review of Everything's Gonna Be All White, ridiculous documentary. We're gonna talk about that. Then we'll get to Lord of the Rings versus this Ring of Power thing they've come up with. And then if we have anything left, we'll talk about whatever you guys want to talk about and go from there. Michael Beacom says, "Morning, Jayne. The hearts are cute. Thank you. It's Valentine's weekend. Everybody. I hope y'all are having a good time with that as well." Some of us who are single are just going to be streaming all weekend, well into Monday, so you don't have to think about it. But definitely have a good morning. So let's go through it and see who is here before we get started. I'm doing this thing where I have dual screens, so hopefully I won't lose too much of the chat this time around, unlike I usually do. BK Panther is here. Says early Saturday mornings. Oi! It is indeed very early indeed. But good morning. I talked about breakfast this morning. I had a muffin and a Danish. I couldn't decide which one I wanted, so I did both. I know I'm going to the gym, so it doesn't matter. Zachariah 315. Howdy, Jayne. Howdy to you. Thank you for joining me. Sultan Al Fahim is also here. Says morning, Jayne. Good morning, BK. Tootsie Slayer. Hello. Let's see. Dark Winter is here. Good morning. We have Ramacross. Hello. George Bonnie 90. Hello from West Virginia. In the house. Ramcross says, my first live with you. Be gentle. Always. That's why there's that lovely music in the beginning. Get everyone comfortable. Put you to sleep if need be. If you're tired, this is your opportunity to get some rest. Let's see. Dark Winter's just starting off. So why would Galadriel be in charge of an army if there's currently no war? The question is, why would she be in charge of an army at all? Certainly at the lead of one. It doesn't make any sense. We'll get into that, though. Bone is here. He says, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Let's see. Dark Winter also said, I've been wondering if Chapek asked Favreau to stay out of that, I guess, Boba Fett, so let the story group try to frame Favreau for their idiocy. And my position was, there's all of this speculation about the internal politics at Disney. Honestly, I don't even care. They all work together. They're under the same banner. And at the end of the day, they're all responsible for what they're doing. They know exactly how they're destroying the series. And we're going to talk about that. And frankly, all of Star Wars. Juice Cannon, I can't stay, but I heart what you do, Jayne. Thank you. Thanks for stopping by. Oh, and a heart. Thank you. Star Wars already died for me. Yeah, so many people feel that way. I'm not quite in that camp, but I'm getting there. Keely Chow, hey. Let's see. Gungnir was here. Like. Thank you. Remember, hit that like button. Let's see. Ronan is here. Hello. Hello. Albert is here. Say hello, everyone. Hello. Michael Beacom made it through. The hearts are cute. Thank you. Let's see. Rasmain is here. Says good morning, Jane and Chad. Good morning. Good morning. Cross purposes with a $5 Canadian super chat says good morning, everyone. Thank you. A little coffee cup. And I have my coffee, my second cup, because I've been up since like 4 this morning because I couldn't sleep. So I've been getting a lot together to talk about today. Oh, Valentine's Day is your wife's favorite. Then you better make it her best favorite today. You always have to take it up a notch every year. Good morning. Tape Drive Games. Hi. Hello. Shake from Hunger Team. Hello. And we also have oops. SP Potter Stark is here. Hello. Yep, up since 4 a.m. Ronan says, I'm with you, but mainly because sleep and I have issues. I mean, who doesn't these days, right? You wouldn't be normal if you didn't have issues. I have up a dual screen today so that I can try to keep my eye on the chat as I go through this stuff. So if I'm not highlighting your message, I'll just be talking to you directly. Unless it's a super chat, of course. So that may, because I'm notorious. I'm notorious for getting behind in the chat. But we have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. First up, the Book of Boba Fett. I don't even know. When I tell you I don't understand what they were doing with this show, and as it turns out, I'm not the only one. Because apparently, nobody knew what was going on with it. Let me pull up an article. It was funny to me. Ronan says they didn't either. They didn't. Michael says after 36 years, it's hard to get original. Can't say more because I'm on a Bluetooth speaker. As she might hear. There are different ways. There are ways, Michael. Daniel Matthews says, hi, borderline normie, interested to hear about shows to avoid. This is one of them. This is one of them. Sultan says they're trying to be Power Rangers. They wish they were Power Rangers. They wish they were Power Rangers. Potter Stark asks, why would people on Twitter call Lord of the Rings fans racist just because they're not impressed with the casting? We're going to get to that soon. We're going to have a whole, like, that's going to be the main topic today. So definitely stick around. But someone asked at Screen Rant of all places, what was the point of the Book of Boba Fett? And in case you haven't heard, I mean, I know a lot of people have been talking about this, but it seems like my theory is this. My theory is that what they wanted to do was to continue this pattern of basically taking legacy characters that traditional old school fans know and love, and use them as sort of a bait and switch. Get them in, get fans to come in, member berries, all of that, get us to watch it, and then flip it into a platform to basically spin off their new characters in their new world. At the same time, I think their plan is to also diminish or devalue these traditional characters, these legacy characters, in order to pump up, build up, or make their new characters seem much more important or more significant. And evidence of that is one, how everything is leading to the sequel trilogy, right? And also how it seems like everything they come up with now is to spin off something new that they've created, as opposed to developing these characters further in their story. This could have been a good series. There's a lot of material they could have worked with on Boba Fett, on Boba Fett's history, on Boba Fett's adventures. And I think that's what people are looking for, because you have that big name called Boba Fett as the title. So that's what people were looking for. Everyone who was familiar with the character was waiting to see the character. And lo and behold, in the series, under his own name, he's not in 2 full episodes. Well, okay. He does appear in the second one, in the second Luke episode, but briefly, and he doesn't say anything. So they spend the entire first part of the series, several episodes, basically turning him into something he isn't, something that fans do not in any way, shape, form, or fashion recognize. And what's funny is that they have other characters telling us he's he's a killer, he's this, he's that, or used to be. And then they have other characters telling us you're weak now, you've changed. And he has. But why? They say that they're developing him, that he's grown, that he's matured, that he's become this other person. But then by the end of the series, he's turned around and said, nah, it's not for me. It's like, okay. Well, what was it for then? What was the point of the book of Boba Fett? It's clearly not to tell us more about him and his adventures. It's clearly not to truly evolve him as a character into some, because they could have made him more mature and, not a killer like he used to be. But they didn't even do that. They did absolutely nothing with this character. And then to insert the Mandalorian in the middle of it, as if fans, I don't know if they thought we wouldn't notice. I don't even know what that was for. But at the end of the day, what was crazy is that it was better than the rest of the series. People were like, oh, this is cool. You have this episode in the book of Boba Fett that is not the Boba Fett at all. And that's the episode people like. Like, you failed when you switch mid-show to a completely different show and people like, that's what we wanted. That's what we're looking for. That's a great job. Good job there. It's insane. And then they introduce Luke. And let me tell you, before I get to the chat, because y'all are blowing up. I felt like the Luke that they're describing was not our Luke. I think the Luke they introduced in the show was Jake Skywalker. It was not Luke. And then on top of that, the CG, whatever it was, I don't know if it was CGI, whatever they did to him, um, it looked. I understand they hired the guy who did a better job of the first version of Luke, but I swear to you, he looked more cringe to me this time around. He looked weird, and he couldn't talk. Like every time he spoke, it messed it up, so he couldn't talk, or they would have him talking like as he was turned in a different direction or something. It was very weird how they had to manipulate the scenes, and it just came across as creepy. It almost felt like this is what it felt like. It felt like if you were watching a good friend or someone you loved who is deceased, because for all practical purposes, that's what we're dealing with Disney, and you're seeing them in front of you in a CGI form. Like it felt creepy, and frankly, it made me sad. Like in a weird way. In a weird way, when I saw him in the Mandalorian, that last episode, I felt like a lot of people. I felt energized. I felt like hopeful again. There was a lot of emotion there because you love this character so much. But this time around, it felt cheap. It felt exploitative, and I don't know. It made me feel sad. It hurt more than anything. Like I didn't want to see that. I didn't want to see it again. Honestly, I don't need them to do that. And then how they had him behave toward Grogu, that is not anything Luke would have done. And we know this. We know this from the Luke that we know, but this is headed toward Jake Skywalker, and that's something he would do, right? Along with, trying to kill his nephew. So it's insane. It's insane. And so I think the book of Boba Fett, I guess, sort of in quick summary of my thoughts on the series, is that it's just the latest example of this practice Disney has adopted of bit by bit destroying, eroding away traditional Star Wars characters to uplift their own. And I do believe that all the stuff they're doing with the High Republic in their novelizations and stuff, that too is where they're headed. Like we're gonna start to see at some point when they've destroyed everything we know, when they've destroyed everything we have left, um, that's when they're gonna introduce their movies and TV shows and things around these brand new ridiculous characters like Avar Chris and all that. So I think that's the plan. And I would not be a bit surprised if that's the direction that they go in because it seems to be the norm. But let's look at the chat. I know I'm behind. I'm behind again. Um, Ronan says, do you think they set up those Moss Vespa Rangers to be a spinoff on purpose? Probably so. I think all of it was on purpose. The other thing too is that the very colorful look and style and personality of those kids is very similar to their High Republic stuff. So I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they get a spinoff or appear more frequently in future shows. Which is the bad thing about it is I wouldn't hate that. I mean, I kind of like the characters. I just didn't like the context in which they were introduced, and the storyline that they gave them wasn't very significant. They didn't do anything really with them. They could have. There was potential there, but it's like they just don't know how to write character-driven stories. It's all about imagery for them. It's all about what you see, what it looks like. So you have this very nice shot of the girl on the bike, right? When she's flying past the guy they're chasing. And it's a beautiful shot. You take a picture of it, you could frame it like it's picture perfect. But that's it. There's no substance. It's all style. And that's the problem with Disney everything these days. Tootsie Slayer says, I don't care about Disney Star Wars. Last thing I saw was Rise of Skywalker. I feel so deflated about everything. Yeah, that was a dramatic mess. Mariel Soul, Gigglesmith says, hey, hey, I'm here for the soothing voice and common sense. Welcome. The Ginger Ninja is here. Hello. Deconstructivism Marxist tactics, says Adirondack Wilderness. Adirondack Wilderness. Listen, I agree with you to a point. I think that's part of it. But I also think what's happening, because you see it across society, it's not just, entertainment, it's not just a single show or a single studio. So I agree with you on a larger scale. But I also think there is a certain laziness to it because these are things that could be done better. Like it literally, it's almost like something has happened in Hollywood where they just don't have talent. they don't even destroy characters right. It's like you're not even doing a good job of that. It's just pathetic. What we're getting is just tiresome. It's annoying more than anything. It's not even anything we can fight really about. It's just bad. Like, who does that? It's so confusing to me how they've lost the art of storytelling. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. Canadian Rebel says, does anyone still care if they're called a racist? I don't think anyone can really because, everybody's a racist apparently. Aren't they going to run out of franchises? I don't know. What are they going to do when they do? I think at some point they should, but it's like, then what? Once they've destroyed everything from like the 70s, 80s, and 90s, what's left? What is left? I don't know. I don't know. But they will find a quantum leap. They're going to redo that. It's insane. I don't know what's happening. First of all, the title, Book of Boba Fett, is silly. It's so grandiose. And for what Boba was, I didn't like the title as soon as I saw it. I watched the first episode and I was done, says BK Panther. I don't blame you. I don't blame you in the least. Quinn with a Q, the $20 super chat. Thank you. He says, I just don't feel excitement or passion when I watch any new Star Wars. There's no emotional attachment for me. By the way, love, I found you. Welcome to the fandom. Thank you, Quinn the Q. Thank you so much. And I share your thoughts. I still I still love Star Wars. I actually just bought a new lightsaber. I still love the idea of Star Wars and what it used to represent, what it could represent. And every time they come up with something new, I'm just like, okay, take a breath. I'm gonna give it a shot, see what happens. But then here we go. We're back to the same old, same old. I don't know why I continue to have hope, but I do. I try. I think if there's any franchise, this would be the one where you can continue to try to have hope, but I don't know. It's getting sad more than anything. Let's see. Oops. Oh my gosh. If I missed your comment, sorry. Let's go through and see where I was. 2 episodes of a 7-episode series. Yeah. It's like they said, Boba Fett's boring, so let's show you some Mandalorian. The thing we actually like, the thing we care about. Mariel Soul said for later, did you see the Ruined Lion YouTube channel? Said he was ashamed to be black after seeing everything going to be all white. I haven't seen that, and I don't share that perspective. We're gonna get to that next, but I don't share that respect. I don't. Here's the thing, and it's so weird that type of subject actually comes up in the show. I don't think people should feel ashamed for what other people do just because they share your skin color. Because there are millions of people who share your skin color, and you can't be responsible for all of them. Well, not even millions, billions probably. And you can't be responsible for all those people. So I'm not ashamed to be anything. The only thing I'm ashamed of is, what I think when I'm watching some of this stuff because they make me curse in my head. And I don't like that. That's the only thing. Let's see. Didn't watch Boba Fett. Did he end up vaporizing anyone? No. No. He killed a guy. I mean, there were a couple scenes where he had some fights, but they were very quick. And they didn't show off his skills, I didn't feel. Probably because you have an older actor. But, Albert says, I can understand that Disney wants to save face and won't ever officially decanonize the sequel trilogy. However, you think they have the sense to just ignore it. You think, you would think they would have the sense to do that. But no. And some people, this is the thing too, like some people believe that they're ignoring it or that they're planning to write it out of the history, but they're not. Like they're definitely leading up to it. Now, where they go from there is a different matter. But they are creating a world around it. They're creating their own universe around it. So I don't see that. I don't see it going away anytime soon. Elvis, hello. He says he's gonna transition to grow strong. He would have to. We'll talk about that in a minute. The CGI is creepy. Yeah, just recast them. And but that's the thing that fans want, It's like anytime the fans have an idea about something, it's almost like they reject it offhand. Like we have to subvert your expectations. So if you speculate about something or ask for something, then they have to ignore it. Potter Stark asks, how do people still support Star Wars? Are fans that desperate for Star Wars content that they're willing to take anything Disney offers? Same situation with The Wheel of Time and the new Lord of the Rings show. Thoughts? I think people simply want something good. I mean, what's happening is you're not ever going to see, I think, a mass boycott. I think what people are trying to do is say, hey, Disney, these are the problems we have with this new thing you've given us. Okay? This take on this franchise we disagree with for the following reasons. And the hope is that, okay, the next time they come out with something, then that'll be better. Because commons, like normal corporations, would take into consideration their customer feedback and improve. So I think that's what we're accustomed to. And I think that's what people generally are trying to accomplish. But Disney, of course, doesn't care. And I mean, I think that goes for Hollywood in general. They just don't care anymore. And so it's like we're in this cycle. And I do too think that to some degree, fans are desperate for Star Wars content because a lot of people love Star Wars. And, they love The Lord of the Rings. And so they do want to see more content. They want to see good content. A Game of Thrones, same thing. Um, but it's like how many times do you have to see what you love being destroyed before you get that it's not going to get any better? And I don't know because I'm still stuck in that cycle myself. Like I'm still there. I'm gonna watch House of the Dragon even after season 8 of Game of Thrones. I don't know why. I can't explain it. There's no logic to it. It's just I want to hope. I don't know. I can't say. Evil clone. Canadian Rebel, I think that is too much to ask. You're not gonna get the badass bounty hunter. Ronan says, I definitely need a show about a big navigating rock, though. That rock is going to get a show. I guarantee you it's going to appear in some show of theirs. I mean, I kind of felt like it was a joke when I read that particular novel, but I forgot the name of the thing. But I definitely think it's going to show up. Let's see. You blame Game of Thrones? Exactly. Knight Mara? Is that how you pronounce it? Hello. Says when you start writing by checking boxes, you've already written yourself into a corner. I agree. Yeah, Geode was his name. Yeah, I agree with you there. It's like they missed the whole concept of telling a story. Now it's all about presenting an image. Albert says, I found you through ads and the long suffering Naomi reviews. I have so many new people because of that. Welcome, everyone. Thank you. I'm glad you like those. That's so much fun. Hanging out with ads is just insane. And that Naomi show was like the perfect show for us to review together because it's so bad, but it's bad in the weirdest ways. So if you haven't checked out the Naomi reviews, definitely do. I have them linked on my channel, but you can also go to Az's channel and watch those. It's insane. It's so funny. I like die laughing just thinking about it. Carlos A. Smith, good morning. Good morning. What color? It's multi, like it changes colors. Let's see. Daniel Matthews asked, probably a common question, but why do they feel the only way to have a strong female is to give her masculine traits? I have a theory. I have a theory. So here's my theory. I think, let me stop sharing the screen because we're done with him. My theory as to why they do this, and I talk about this a lot on my channel. If you're new to my channel, you can go through some of my old videos, and I talk a lot about the way in which Hollywood seems to be trying to mutate, blur the lines between what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman. They have been on this campaign to basically make men more effeminate and weaker, quote unquote beta males, whatever you want to call it. But even worse than that, I think they give men these super hyper feminine characteristics these days. And for women, it's like they hyper masculinize them. Um, and in order to be a strong, quote unquote, strong female, strong woman, it's like they have to turn you into a man. And not just in terms of personality now. We're seeing more and more, you see this in kids entertainment as well as adult entertainment, where they try to make individuals, male and female, androgynous. They try to make it so that you can't tell who people are. And they're trying to normalize the pronoun thing, I think, is very much connected to this. This whole idea of you can't tell. You can't tell what's a man and what's a woman. These two things that are evolved through nature, right? Or if you're a Christian or religious person, you believe we're created with purpose. Um, there's this idea that they don't really exist. It's all in your head, right? It's all made up. And I think the reason why they're doing it, I think what's driving it, and this is going to be controversial. I'm probably going to get called names for saying this. Um, but I think that the idea is that you do have people in the real world who are gender non-conforming or whatever, who don't quite know what they are, or they identify as multiple things. They feel they're in the middle. And I believe that in order for them to make room for themselves to feel more comfortable and accepted, it's like they feel they have to tear down heteronormative lifestyles, okay, or whatever they call it. But they have to take down what they consider a the patriarchy, something that was established, these firm hierarchies and categories pertaining to femininity and masculinity and womanhood and manhood. It's like if you can destroy those, then somehow that makes it easier for them to exist in the world. If you uphold those, then you're anti-trans or anti, whatever the new thing is. I think that's underlying a lot of it. I think that's what's drawing it in, um, drawing so much of our entertainment in that direction. And it's crazy to watch it happen because it's so contrary to what is reflective of the real world. It's almost like they're trying to reshape society and they're starting with entertainment and they're starting with books and magazines and comics and film and television and just how we view society. And if they push enough of it in our faces, we start to believe that it actually reflects the world. And then you start to have particularly young people um, believing that these things reflect who they are. And then you've changed everything. You've changed, frankly, thousands of years of how humanity has become and what we are today, how we've survived. Um, Personally, I think it's insulting to women, certainly insulting to men, and probably long term dangerous to some degree. Because without it, you see the erosion of a lot of institutions that we value. We see the erosion of the institution of marriage, which has already had to deal with a ton of issues, with divorces on the rise and whatnot. But you also see the erosion of general relationships and intimacy between men and women. If you notice, in the West anyway, birth rates are low and on the decline in a lot of places. So people aren't even hooking up and having kids by accident anymore. Like it's getting to a point where um if you if you continue to erase what it means to be a man and a woman, you're ultimately going to erase what it means to be in the types of relationships that reproduce themselves. And how is that ever going to make sense? How is that good for mankind? Like it's just so weird to me, and there's so many long-term consequences that I don't think people consider. But that's the long answer to your question. I think the short answer is um, because it makes them more comfortable. It is very narcissistic, someone said. Oh my gosh, this name, Vic Riddlehead in with 400. I don't recognize the currency, but thank you. Thank you so much. He says, my mom found Lord of the Rings movies boring when I told her what crap they're doing to my favorite books in the public eye with their adaptations. Her like Wheels of Time, her advice was to stop watching. They will never be as good as the books. They'll never be as good as the books. However, here's the thing, they could be. And I think the more fans start making their own adaptations, you're going to start to see that. So, for example, um, you have a lot of fan based well, first of all, you have a lot of fan fiction that's better than the stuff coming out of Hollywood. But on YouTube and platforms like that, you're beginning to see more fans creating their own content, creating their own Star Wars stories, creating their own Lord of the Rings stories, creating their own Game of Thrones stories that are amazingly good. So I agree with her that, at some point, I think people generally are just going to get tired of looking to Hollywood for anything. We've already sort of grown away from looking at the media for news, right? How many people actually still watch cable news? It's kind of on decline across the board. Um, and I think we're going to see the same thing with Hollywood in time, where more and more are going to say, you know what? I'd rather watch this fan made Star Wars show than anything coming out of Disney. I think we're going to see that more across the board. And I can't wait for that because there really is some good stuff that people just going outside and putting together. Not only that, but I love watching like fan reviews and fan shows here on YouTube where people get into the lore and get into their favorite characters and where they're headed and what they would like to see going forward or what they imagined happen with the characters. Like there's so much to explore outside the Hollywood box that they're creating. The socialization they're trying to accomplish, the agendas and everything that the politics that they try to insert into everything. You just have to go to fans at some point for good content. And I think that's what's happening. So we're moving in that direction. Um, I personally haven't gotten to the point where I'm going to stop completely, but I'm so close. And to give you an example of how close, I'm one of those people who is a huge Star Trek fan. Like, I love Star Trek. I'm one of those people who watch the original series every week to this day. Like, it's how I relax. I really enjoy it. Um, and I have not been able to get into the new Star Trek. I've watched a single episode and that's it. Everything else has come from Gary's reviews. Like I can't take it. It was so bad that I just couldn't do it. The only thing I did watch was Picard, and I don't think I'll watch the next one. So for me, there are some things that I have and am willing to walk away from, and Star Trek is one of them. And that's again, that's coming from someone who that is my favorite television series of all time. So everybody gets to that breaking point. I think everybody gets to that point where they just can't do it anymore. And I've gotten there. Let's see. Southeastern Kaiju, hello. Your voice has a meditative quality. Well, thank you. Ronan says Timothy Oliphant also felt like he was practicing his Raylan Gibbons since he's getting his Justified series back out there. You know what's interesting? I kind of think he was one of the better characters in the show. I wasn't a huge fan of his, but he was one of the more interesting ones. It would be interesting to see him get a spinoff. What kind of saber did I get? I cannot remember the name of it off the top of my head. Um, I haven't even taken it out of the box. It just got here. I'll have to look at. Maybe I'll do a review. Southeastern Kaiju says Daniel Matthews. Oh, because women with curves and female traits aren't allowed. Yeah, because it's it attracts the male gaze. It attracts the male gaze. Canadian Rebel says, I'm so depressed. My childhood franchises are getting massacred. Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. I'm pretty sure Halo will be ruined next. Oh my God. Oh my God. Let's not even get into Halo. I saw the trailer for that. Oh, that's going to be. Oh my God. I can't even. Carlos A. Smith says, what we are witnessing, a generation that doesn't know the creative bent because today's technology is a distraction. I think it could be part of it. But the thing is, I don't know. I don't know what to say about that because some of them are out there creating their own content too. I think it's just Hollywood trying to do that, honestly. Potter Stark says, how does Disney get praised still for half-hearted attempts and their efforts towards social justice? They don't even destroy characters that well, is a savage take that's sadly true. I don't know how they continue to get any credit, but somehow they manage it. Carlos A. Smith says the sequel trilogy is a non-moneymaker on the books. The High Republic is not breaking records in sales. It's not. And all previous KK projects are halted. Things are changing, but it takes time. I will see. We hear so much, and goes to another question someone raised about the inner politics at Disney and what's really going on. I'm of a mind, I'll believe it when I see it. I'll believe it when I see it. That's what I'm waiting on. How will they explain the great extinction event of Black characters later on in the movies? This is. Oh, there's so much to say about that. We're going to get to it. Time for a Jayne theory. When Star Wars hit in 77, they were totally unprepared to exploit it, so we fans were desperate for anything Star Wars. They threw together the Star Wars Holiday Special. Boba Fett feels like that. I think Boba Fett feels worse, almost. Let's see. Oh, definitely. We're getting to token stuff in just a minute. Let's see. Angel Art Critic says, hi, I overslept. Sorry. No problem. Welcome. Whenever you feel like it, come on in. Come on in. No kids also means less workforce, less tax revenue, less Social Security, which means many more things, says Mitch Ryan. I agree. Ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da. Let's see. Oh no. Frederick Landon says, "Do you think Lord of the Rings TV show will be as good as Naomi or worse?" Worse. I think it'll be worse. And what's so funny is that from the looks of the images that just came out, it feels like a CW series. That's what I was saying on my chat on Twitter. Like, it's kind of scary how cheap it looks. Quinn the Q with a $10 super chat. Thank you. He says, "Do you have a PayPal or Patreon? Is there any movie or TV show coming out you're really excited for?" So to address the PayPal, I do. It is my email, thejaynetheory@gmail.com. So that is my PayPal. And I don't have a Patreon set up or memberships. I'm working on it. It will be coming. I promise. Is there any movie or TV show coming out that you are really excited for? Let me think on that first. I don't think there is, honestly. The last thing I was excited about was The Expanse, but that's come and gone. Good series. The last season wasn't the greatest, but still better than anything we're getting anywhere else. But in terms of upcoming series, gosh, I really want this is gonna sound crazy, and I know everybody in the chat is gonna call me crazy, but I really I need the Obi-Wan series to be good. I can't. I really want it to be good. This is me having hope for no reason again. This is me having hope for no good reason. Joker Voice says Arcane was really good. I couldn't get into Arcane. I really couldn't get into it. Um, but it's the Obi-Wan series. Like y'all, I love Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I want that show to be a success. So that's excited is a strong word. But I want to see it. I want it to be good. I just don't know that it will be. In fact, I'm pretty sure it won't be. But that would be the show. Um, let's see. Michael Beacom with the $10 super chat. Thank you. He says, regarding Jane's voice, yep, always soothing, always positive, even when it's bad. She could describe the ELE asteroid hit like, hey, do you like rocks? Well, we'll get to see a big one close up. It's gonna be great. Can't wait. I'm so excited. Thank you. Southeastern Kaiju said, retconning characters without any long reaching plans of how it affects the franchise is a terrible idea. It is, and yet they keep doing it. It is absolutely insane. They just do it for images. They just want pictures. They just want marketing. How do you drive a franchise off of marketing alone? It's like that's the new strategy. Shrek ended with the premiere of Enterprise, says Michael Beacom. I agree with you. And yes, the pedantic penguin. This is a type of storytelling that's been lost. I'm glad you brought that up. He says Star Trek TNG was so great about presenting both sides of an argument and letting people decide for themselves, something new shows get away from and instead push a conclusion on the viewer. Not only that, they want to lecture the viewer. In case you don't know, we're going to double down and tell you again how wrong you are, how bad you are, how much you suck. Like, that's their new thing. They don't know how to weave a story. I've said this before. A lot of people in our community complain about agenda and messaging in storytelling and entertainment and how it should be. Um, It shouldn't be quote unquote immersive. It should be sort of escapist. I agree with you. But here's the thing, when people push back and say, yeah, but there was always politics in it, blah, 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 I think these two are talking past each other. Because the reality is, storytelling is about morality. It is a morality tale. It is telling you a message. It's something, it's trying to convey something for you to live by. So they're right in that respect. Where they're wrong is that it's done in the context of a story. It's done in such a way that everybody can relate, or that a lot of people generally can relate to both sides of whatever's happening. You understand the other's point of view because of how the story is told, how the messaging is communicated. And it's like they don't get that. They don't understand subtlety. It's like there's no sense of that anymore. It's okay. Take Falcon and the Winter Soldier, right? So you have a black character in the story. Why does everything have to be because he's black? Everything has to be about race and oppression. And in a very literal, on the nose sense, and against him, someone who has just helped save the world, which would never happen. Like, that would never, how he was approached and how he was treated was not how that would have ever played out. They could have done something much different, much more subtle, and gotten the point across that in the world in which things have happened, human beings are still having difficulty getting along. You could have done that. You could have done it in a way that wasn't exploitative of his race, that wasn't stereotypical, and that wasn't reflective purely and on the nose of modern day politics, and not in a preachy way. You could have done that, but they chose not to because they don't have any sense of creativity. They don't have any sense of perspective. It's I bounce back and forth in trying to understand if it's intentional or if they're just ultimately ignorant. I don't know. Hey, Jay. Drunk 3PO says 50 people in here. I know, it's amazing. It's like the most people I've ever had in a live stream. Southeastern Kaiji says male gaze, not male gaze. Oh my god. The Access Media wants access. Let me scroll down and highlight this comment. 50 people. Like the most people literally I've ever had in a chat. Thank you guys for being here. And me ever behind. Me ever behind. Good morning, Joker voice. Potter Stark says, suggestion, can you do a stream or video highlighting J.K. Rowling and accusations of racism and transphobia against her and talk about her so-called problematic Harry Potter at some point? I think I did talk about the you talking about the Jewish thing with Harry Potter? I did a video on that. And I think I did a video on Rowling as well. I have to go back and check, but I'm definitely going to have a video in the future where I sort of compile a lot of the gender stuff and just do an in-depth take on it, because I've talked about it in different videos, but I don't have one big concise one where I break it down completely, what Hollywood is doing and what I think the consequences of it could be. But I'll definitely do that at some point. Joker voice. We'll have to definitely check that out. Okay, so a lot of people are talking about Lord of the Rings. We're gonna get to that. I know that's the main topic, but before we get to that, Reacher's good too. I haven't seen Yellowstone. Okay, so Canadian Rebel says, I'm just glad there's no new Stargate coming out so they can't ruin it. Don't give them any ideas. Do not give them any ideas. Exactly. If it's not their politics, Then it's an ist or a phobos thing. Aw, thank you, Jay, with a 2.99 super sticker. Let me see what it is. Y'all know it takes me. Oh, a little pear with hearts. Thank you. Too cute. And Southeastern Kaiju with a $2 super sticker says thanks for being here. Thank you. Let me go to it. $2 super chat, sorry. Thank you. All right, I think I skipped around a bit, but let's get to the next topic because oh my gosh. Oh, wait. Video Fox. Hello. It says, I found you through your Naomi review with ads. Thank you for coming. Those are hilarious. If you haven't seen the Naomi reviews, definitely check those out. Let's see. The the pedantic penguin says, "You're awesome, Jane Theory. You're killing it, and deserve all the success in the world. Love your stuff. Thank you." And I agree. It's definitely a touchy subject. Morning, the new dark shadow. BC. Morning. There's no such thing as late here. There's no such thing as late here. All right, on to our next topic. And it is everything's going to be all white. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I'm going to talk briefly about this, just give you my take on it. Um, Let me catch up a little bit on the comments real quick. Jay says, drunk 3PO, why did the black elf have a fade? Someone said he looked like Don Lemon. I died when they said that. I don't understand what they're doing with the. Oh my God. It's so ridiculous. He doesn't even look like an elf. See, this is the thing too, and I should skip right to that, but I'm not. I'm not going to skip right to it because people are still just waking up. But here's the thing. Elves should not look like your average people. Like they're supposed to be otherworldly in appearance. All elves, but particularly in this story. And he looks like random dude. Like they didn't do anything with him to make him look more elvish. And yeah, he just basically has a face. It's like, what is happening? And apparently, he's in a quote unquote interracial relationship, and that's a problem. So they're really going there with this character. It is so stupid, y'all. Okay, okay, okay. Yes, exactly. Okay, okay. Before we get to the Middle Earth thing, let's just knock this out real quick. So everything's gonna be all white. Is this story? Is this new series on Showtime? And it is really bad. And I don't mean that just because of how it basically tries to troll white people. I don't know if y'all are familiar with this, if you've seen it. I know Ryan did a video on it. I think Geeks and Gamers may have done a video on it. Here's the problem with this show, and I just want to knock this out real quick and get to the stuff we're really here for. This is the problem with this show. I watched it. I watched the first episode because I wasn't gonna go based just on, the trailer or based just on the articles and things like that. I wanted to see what this was about because they have a way of creating like triggering marketing or provocative marketing and then trying to have a show or movie or something that's actually decent. Um, it's a weird thing they do anytime it has anything to do with Black people. It's crazy. But this show is actually substantively bad. It's ridiculous. It's insulting. It's insulting to white people, but it's also insulting to Black people. And here's why. First of all, it centers around the January 6th event. That's the whole point of this series. That is the focus. It's political. Okay. I'm convinced that it's designed to try and get um, Black people on board with caring about what happened on January 6th and get Black people on board with supporting and voting for Democrats in the next election. I think that's what it was about because it starts and ends with what happened there, and scenes from that day are sprinkled throughout the episode. They can't let it go. Exactly, Opus. They can't let it go. It's promoted as if, oh, we're going to deep dive into racism and discrimination and things that Black people are experiencing. And that's where it becomes offensive to Black people because it doesn't do any of those things. When it's not talking about January 6th, it's talking about slavery. Like, no, seriously, it's talking about slavery. It's talking about um, how immigrants were treated. And it's constantly insulting white people generally and whiteness as a concept, while simultaneously upholding this idea of Blackness and making Black people out to be victims. Just throughout the entire series. It was the most annoying thing I think I have seen yet. And I say that every week. Every week they come out with something else. But it's like Nick says, it's designed to bait people into it. And they talk constantly about white fragility and all of this. But here's the thing, it doesn't even do that well. So, one of the things they do, and this is how bizarrely it's designed, it has actual interviews with people, right? Who are very essentially racist. But then, in addition to that, it has a white character who's not real, not a real person, but a character that is a caricature of a white person, and specifically a caricature of an Italian American. And they did that intentionally because one of the things they have him say after the slavery segment is my ancestors weren't responsible for slavery. They weren't even here. And the response to that comes out of the mouth of a caricature of a Black person by representing sort of the opposite side of the argument, of course, a Black woman, who's a caricature of Black women in every way, who's saying, well, it doesn't matter. It's like, you're white, so who cares if your ancestors were here or not? Who cares if they were here? If they would have even been able to have afford slaves. Um, you're still responsible. Like literally, this is what they say. So throughout the series, again, throughout the show, they keep going back to January 6th. Throughout the show, they keep going back to these fake characters saying racist and stereotypical things to each other or about each other, making fun of them both. And it's insulting to them both. And I don't even know if they see that. And then in the midst of this, they have interviews with people, one of whom, well, no, two of them are extremely insulting and racist, particularly the Black female, because of course, they have a Black male who's just goofy. Like he has criticisms of white people, but it's in a funny, kind of goofy, comedic way. And he also, this is what's interesting. He actually criticizes himself as well. Like he acknowledges that he has issues as well. So that was refreshing. But the black woman doesn't do that. She's just, just big, like overweight, of course, dark skinned black woman, hates white people. That's her thing. And then you have um one of the other people they talk to is a photographer who was there on January 6th. And I guess we're looking January, yeah. And I guess we're looking at his coverage. He was kind of fair, more or less. And then you have a professor of history who was the only person in this entire episode who made any sense at all. But in many ways, she was drowned out by everyone else. And it was absolutely insane. It was insane how terribly cringe it was. It was insane how terribly like racist, like deeply racist it was. Overtly racist to white people and subtly racist to black people. Oh, and here's the other thing. If you want to see a summary of everything wrong with CRT, critical race theory, this episode exemplifies it. And I guarantee you, part of the reason this thing was created was so that they would have something like it to play in schools. I would not I wouldn't be surprised at all if you see this on the curriculum in schools across this country, at least in the more liberal sides, next week, like or whenever the series is done. Because it's written and it plays out as if it's trying to be educational when really it's just trying to insult people and push this idea of white guilt and black victimhood. And it pushes this idea of um essentially quote unquote people of color racial superiority and white racial inferiority. Like it's insane. This is what it's insane. It's truly crazy. But I would not be surprised if that's what you see. Moon Dreams with a 99-cent super sticker. Thank you. Let's see what it is. Let's see what it is. I think let's see. My computer is so slow. Uh-oh. I gotta catch up. Oh, my computer is so slow. I'm so far behind. Okay, it'll pop up in a sec. But thank you. Thank you for the super sticker. Opa says it's like they have to rope all of these narratives together, even if they aren't related, almost like each point can't stand on its own. And honestly, that's what it felt like. Oh, and that was 100. Thank you, Moon Dreams. It just popped up. It felt like they wanted to blend things together that didn't matter because they talked about slavery and they talked about January 6th. And what else did they talk about? Um, I can't remember. It was so stupid. Immigration and history. Oh, so they did get into a little bit about how history has been portrayed. And this is a CRT portion of the story. So one of the things they were pushing when they were talking about history was this idea that in Western society, particularly the United States, we have romanticized our quote unquote forefathers. No, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that. I think there is a romanticization that has happened over the years. But you're seeing this swing, this extreme swing to the far other end of the discussion to demonizing everything. So we've gone from everything is great and no one, everyone's perfect and no one did anything wrong to this swing towards everyone is evil. Like George Washington, all of these people were evil people. It's like, can we just, is there a middle ground where we can just acknowledge history sort of as it happened? Why do we have to frame everything with an agenda latent narrative? But that's all CRT is about, and that's all this show is about. It's about framing every human experience that's negative into some sort of thing where you can blame a whole group of people instead of just the individuals involved. They explain away dismissively how white immigrants were treated. How do you do that? Like, how do you, in a show where you're supposed to be talking about how bad it is to discriminate against people, that's supposed to be the point. Look at what happened to Irish immigrants in this country and Italian immigrants, especially, and just dismiss it and just say, you know what, it doesn't matter. Y'all are still white, y'all still responsible for slavery. Like, that's where they are. It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And it's incredibly racist. And it's incredibly insulting. And it's clearly not intended to educate anybody. It's only intended to make people feel bad or to be provocative and to cause people to respond negatively as opposed to, or even emotionally, as opposed to actually having a conversation. Because you could have had a conversation. There are better documentaries on slavery. There are better documentaries on discrimination, on racism, on history, on all of these things. This was a cheap cash grab slash CRT video. That's all it is. That's all it was about. And at the end of the episode, that was my conclusion. I didn't come away with any type of insight, with any new perspective. It would either, if I were white, I would come away thinking these people have lost their minds. If I were white, I would just be like, no, I don't think so. And as a black person, I come away with, what in the world was this? What in the world is this? What are you people doing? But we know what they're doing. They're just being divisive for the sake of being divisive. Not because they care about anything that's happening in the real world. Not because they want to address any actual issues, which exist. They waste the money that went into telling a story, documenting something. They took it as an opportunity to basically be Twitter in video form. That's all that this show is. And I'm not shocked that they cut off the comments. The downvotes must be insane. But they should have left the comments on. Who's a snowflake? Who's fragile if you can't even leave the comments up and respond to them? Subpar Genitalia Talia says they're hoping to create more white racists. They're in drastic short supply for their race baiting needs. I agree. I think that's what they're trying to do. But here's the thing, and you raise an important point. Let's look at the facts. Let's look at the reality of the situation on the ground. The reality of the situation is that Hispanics are becoming the majority in America. Okay? That's happening. That's happening because they are coming. And there has been and will not be, most likely, any new influx of people from Europe or Africa. Okay? Those ships aren't sailing this way. So the only thing that's left are the people in this hemisphere. And the people in this hemisphere are overwhelmingly Hispanic. And consequently, that is what the population is going to be. Ultimately, we go forward a couple generations into the future. The interesting thing about Hispanics is that they're not necessarily identifying with our racial norms. I mean, race isn't quote unquote real. I mean, it's very political. And they've sort of abandoned a lot of the ideas about it that we hold and that were pushed in their him in a lot of the places where their ancestors are from. And they've adopted sort of this take, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong and you're in the chat and you're Hispanic, but they've adopted this take of basically, they're just Hispanic. That's it. So if they're part black, with the exception of a few who identify as Afro Latina or Latino, for the most part, they just identify as Hispanic or Latino or Latina, right? And if they're mixed with white, same thing. Because in reality, they are a mix of all of these things and indigenous. And so what's happening is that you're going to ultimately, in a few generations, you're going to have a population that is more or less the same. What then? What then? How are you going to be able to continue to promote this division and this hatred toward people when those people don't exist anymore to any significant degree? That's what's going to be interesting. Mitch Ryan says Caucasoid, Mongoloid, Negroid, and Austral are the primary races. Everyone is one of those things. Everyone is all of those things. The interesting thing about this whole idea of race is that it's changed over the years. It's always been political, and what someone happens to be at any given time has always changed. So, for example, what is Mongoloid? You look at it and you say, okay, well, East Asians would fit into this category. However, if you look at the Pacific Islanders, they also share this ancestry, but they're phenotypically not Mongoloid. They're also phenotypically not Australoid, and you do have people in the same region, phenotypically Negroid, who are genetically the same as their Mongoloid counterparts. Phenotype and genotype aren't necessarily consistently aligned around the world. Pakistan, you have people in Pakistan who are classically Caucasoid, meaning, in the very stereotypical sense, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, fair-skinned, Nordic Aryans. Genetically, more closely related to the people around them than they are to Europeans. You have people in India, phenotypically indistinguishable from people in Africa, genetically as different as night and day. People in West Africa are more closely related to Europeans than either one are to people from Australia and the Aborigines. Race makes no sense. You can make geographic distinctions between people. You can make distinctions based on color, to some degree phenotype, but they don't always align. And people, particularly in this hemisphere, are a mix of these things. I'll give you another example if we really want to go there. Cavalli Sforza, I always get his name wrong, prominent geneticist. One of the things he describes about European DNA, for example, is that they're a mix of Asian and African, and they are. They're a mix of people who are, in terms of bone structure, principally East African, but in terms of skin tone, have skin tones much more similar to West Asians. Add into that mix the fact that East Africans also carry genes for very light skin. Even though they don't have it, they have some of the darkest skin on Earth. It's complex. It's not as simple as people often want it to believe it to be. And when you get into racial identity, like what people call themselves, it gets even more complicated. Because in America, for example, There was a time in Michigan where you could be a quarter Black Garrett, you could be a quarter African, but you were legally white. In Louisiana, we had multiple categories: octroon, quadroon, you name it. Um, Different things you could be depending upon how much African ancestry you had. And all of these things shifted depending on what time period you're talking about. I have ancestors, because I'm also a genealogist, um, who, from census to census, people go literally from white to mulatto to Negro to mulatto to Negro. And some of their relatives are still white, and some of their relatives are indigenous. My second great grandfather, and this is what's really funny to me, on his death certificate, it says Mexican or white. He was, in fact, Mexican, but his appearance was white, and they couldn't conclude which of these should be. Like, it was one or the other. He's both or one or the other. We don't know. So that's what they put on his death certificate. Where I live in Louisiana, and this is even more fun. So in Louisiana, you know our history is a bit different from the rest of the United States. In Louisiana, so prior to the Civil War, it was much more like Latin America in that we had all of these gazillion categories. Because of the Catholic influence, slave owners and free white men, French Spaniards for the most part, if they had children out of wedlock or children with black women or native women, which they did from the very first day they came here, um, they were inclined to free them. They were inclined to raise them. They were inclined to take care of them. They were inclined to recognize them, including on legal documents like birth certificates. Consequently, these people grew up very different from, in, let's say, the rest of America, what became America, where the English just had all these kids in the fields all willy nilly and didn't raise them or do anything with them. In America, generally, they kept for a long time a pretty good distinction between black and white because of their behavior and their attitude toward their own children. In Louisiana, because we had a different attitude, that distinction began to blur very quickly. And so you began to see people arise who looked very much like a blend of everything. And to this day, if you go somewhere like, I'm just going to throw out there, um, let's say Lafayette. It's a good Cajun parish. You can look at somebody and you have absolutely no idea what they are. You think you do. You may have an opinion based on your experience, but you have no idea what anyone is. Because in Southwest Louisiana in particular, in the south of Louisiana, we had this tradition where French and Spanish men would basically have their mixed families in other homes. Like that's something that happened in my family too, where they would have their black or whatever Creole woman and kids set up in a different house somewhere in town. But in Southwest Louisiana, Cajuns didn't care. They lived with their wives and their kids, same roof, and that was the case all over. So my point is this. Race is much more complex, and the history of it is complex depending on where you are, what time period, who you're dealing with. When the Americans came after the Civil War, everything changed. Everything changed almost overnight because suddenly people had to shift how they identified in order to fit new racial and racist norms. So even though today you can come down here and you can't necessarily tell who people are, what they're supposed to be, what their history is, this and that. Someone can tell you they identify as a white and you look at them and you're like, "Oh, okay." Or they can tell you they're black and you're like, "Where? Like to how?" But people had to make choices after the Americans took over because their identity system was much more binary. And so you had a lot of people who were forced to abandon their language, forced to abandon their culture, forced to abandon a much more complex racial identity in order to fit in. And that's just America. Then you look at how Native Americans were treated and how racial politics worked with them, and then the Asians who came here. As someone who also descends from quote unquote Mississippi Chinese, you should look at those census records. They're a mess. When the Chinese got here, they didn't even know how to identify them. On some census records, they were identified as black. These people are Chinese. On the very next census record, they'll be labeled Chinese. So then the question was, what do we do with their kids? So in some families, the kids were identified as Chinese, and in some families, they were identified as black. And in some, they were mulatto. It was insane. It's so stupid. But that's an overview. That's an overview of the craziness. Um, and that's what makes shows like this so problematic for me because they're trying to blame. It's almost like they're stuck in a past when the future and the present are so very different. They're trying to blame people for something that they're not only not responsible for and their ancestors weren't responsible for, but it's something that they can't really do anything about. And in a few years, is going to be, it's not going to not even exist. It's like right now, what I would rather see, I'm talking specifically about Black people. What I would prefer to see Black people doing right now, instead of creating shows like this and trying to trigger white people and trying to make white people be like guilty and, feel blame or shame and all this craziness. What I would prefer to see Black people doing is getting an education, getting a jobs, creating jobs, building your wealth, building your legacy. Like that's what everybody should be doing. But I feel like there's a segment of Black America that feels like they just can't move forward until white people as a whole are punished. Like it's this thing where they can't let it go. They can't get past it. They feel so personally wronged by things that didn't happen to them. Or maybe some things that did, that they blame an entire race of people. And they just can't. They can't move for even if the rest of the world is leaving them behind. And they get mad at Black people like me and others who just say, "You know what? I don't care. If it's not personally affecting me, if it's not personally affecting my finances or my family or my religion, I don't care. I'm moving forward." Know your history. Absolutely. Know where you come from so you can't, you don't repeat the past. There are lessons to be learned. But everybody should be moving forward. If you're not moving forward, if you're stuck in the past, then you have nothing but this resentment and this anger and this bitterness. And it turns into these kinds of projects where you come across as not strong, you come across as weak, you come across as a joke. It comes across as docile, frankly, and pathetic. I'm not kidding. It's not even a joke. It's like, why do you feel that every moment of your day has to be dedicated to telling people how horrible you think they are as a whole, based on something that they literally had nothing to do with? People who just like you are struggling, people who just like you are just trying to get by, Americans are some of the most overworked and underpaid people in the Western world. and this is how you choose to spend your time? Like, we have so much more in common. Southeastern kaiju says, "Getting an education and working for a living is deemed as being white. Some rejected out of hand. You're not I wish you weren't right, but it's true." And I think that that's the perception. I think that's the very perception that a lot of them have. It's like an insecurity. And this is why history is so important. If you're going to teach history, then you should teach all of it. And one of the things they constantly talk about, and well, actually, this is going to come up in the Lord of the Rings discussion too. But one of the things that they don't teach when they talk about American history, they don't talk about free people of color. They don't talk about free Black people. And what we were talking about earlier about Louisiana and how it was distinct, our culture led to one of the largest populations of free people, of free Black people in the South. And not only that, but one of the wealthiest populations of free Black people in the country. In the country. Bankers, business owners. These people are educated. Some of them sent their kids to Europe to be educated. They traveled the world. They did all of these things. They were successful landowners. Like, I mean, that's not in your history book, though. It's in ours in Louisiana, but for the rest of the country, that's not being taught. You have people who genuinely believe that the only experience Black people had in this hemisphere was as slaves. And I think that's feeding into a lot of this. The other thing that they never want to take responsibility for is this: the very white people that they hate so much, the colonial era white people, right? The slave owners, all these people, these these are the ancestors of Black Americans too. So you're mad, not at who, if you're gonna be mad, white Americans for the most part don't descend from these people. The majority of white Americans descend from immigrants who came here fairly recently. The people who descend from the people who own the slaves are the descendants of the slaves. So if there's anyone you're gonna be mad about, if there's anyone you're gonna be mad at, it would be your own ancestors. But no one wants to have that conversation. No one wants to have that conversation. So that's my take on that. It's not worth it. Oh, thank you. So that's my take on that. Let's see. Okay, let me address this real quick too. So, Zoomed 1975 was talking to Mitch and says, for instance, before the modern blacks, the Bantu, the vast majority of Black Africans were of a brownish phenotype. There are remnants in South Africa. They call them the Bushmen. Okay, let me clarify that because a lot of things are happening here. Um, so when we talk about Black Americans specifically, the vast majority descended from West Africans. West Africans and Bantu are actually not the same. They're closely related, but they're actually not the same. Genetically, they're distinct groups, sort of like Italian and Irish, or well, I shouldn't say Italian and Irish. The Irish are genetic outliers, but um, they would be distinguishable like Northern and Southern Europeans. They're different groups. And I mean, they're like literally genetically different groups. Um, but also regionally, Bantu arose in Central West Africa. Yeah, the race lecture. I love talking about this stuff because I love history and I love genetics, and I've studied it for a while, so, um, but they are distinct groups, and it's interesting. I bring this up I'm glad you brought this up because it allows me to bring up the fact that to add to how complex race is as a concept, um, West Africans are actually a rather modern, um, thing, meaning they haven't always existed. West Africa was a place that everybody went to and sort of merged and became the West African, sort of this population that exists today. So, for example, you had people about 5,000 years ago who came over from East Africa. You had people who were there from the beginning who were akin to Bantu, but not quite. You had people who were there who were like pygmies. You had people who were there who were like the Khoisan, um, who are the oldest population in Africa. And you also had people come in from North Africa, the Berbers. And all of these peoples merged and became the what is one of the younger groups, I think, on the African continent, and that's the West Africans. They're also mixed with Nilo-Saharans as well, who came from the Sahara region and spread out. Speaking of them, they spread out from there into Northwest and East Africa. So West Africans and Black Americans are they have their own sort of diverse heritage that people don't talk about. They don't talk about that nearly enough. And then you have the Bantu, who spread out from Central West Africa to the rest of Africa, pretty much the southern half. And you have the other groups, the Bantu, the Bush, the Bushmen are the Khoisan. You have the Pygmies in Central Africa, who were nearly wiped out. As a matter of fact, they're still the subject of genocide in the Congo region. People have actually had to physically try to relocate them because they're constantly under attack. I mean, it's basically the Holocaust that's happening there. You have East Africa. Someone asked if there are Indians in East Africa. There are. Um, and then you have, of course, the Berbers in the north and the Nilo-Saharans, who are the people who traveled everywhere. They're originally from the Sahara. They're semi-nomadic, um, like the Fulani, what's it? The Maasai, groups like that, spread out all over the place. And they're all very different phenotypically. They all look very different. It's incredibly diverse. You know, that continent is amazingly diverse. And that's going to come up in our next discussion as well. But I just wanted to clarify that because they do have a brownish phenotype compared to Nilo-Saharans who have darker skin generally. And then, of course, the Berbers tend to have very light skin. And then the Bushmen have almost a very light yellow, sort of Asian complexion. So, yeah, it's diversity. Natural diversity, though, not forced. Listen to country music. Okay, so let's get to our main topic. Lord, Lord, Lord of the Rings. Oh my gosh. Zoom says, we, the people of Iberian Peninsula, have a love-hate relation with the Berbers. In some centuries, we had the upper hand, and other, the Berbers did. Yeah, but y'all are also closely related. Let's see. So I did a video earlier talking about Tolkien, the properties going up for sale. So the only way Amazon was able to do this series is because it fell into a loophole, which I talk about there. Um, but it's insane to me that now Amazon is in a position to buy the rights to, my God, all of it. And anyone can it's going up for sale, it's going up for auction, and because they have this series, it's expected that they are going to pull no punches in trying to get their hands on the entire IP, and, Lord help us. What's gonna happen from there, I have no idea. But I wanted to start, before we get into it, let me pull up the article. So this is the article from Vanity Fair that's getting so much attention and everyone's upset about it, including myself. Um, but I wanted to show you guys what I noticed. When the original Lord of the Rings was introduced, Vanity Fair also did a comparison to the story, imagery, and the photography and all of that, and basically talking about, the hobbits are coming and Middle Earth and all of that. And I remember thinking how beautiful and authentic and inviting the images were and how they fit in the story. Like, even if you didn't know that this was coming from a movie, you would know that it was associated with Lord of the Rings just from how the characters were dressed, from their mannerisms, from their look. It looked like Lord of the Rings, right? This is another page. Look at that. I mean, look at the hobbits. It looks authentic to the time, it looks authentic to the period, it looks authentic to the story. It's beautiful. Here's another page. Each shot perfectly exemplifies the characters that they portray. You get a sense of story and of history and their facial expressions and their clothing and their setting and their poses, everything. It was beautiful, and it focused on the story. But no, not anymore. Not with this new stuff. The Rings of Power the Rings of Power decided they wanted to lead with quote unquote multicultural diverse multiculturalness, diversity, and of course strong female characters as they define strong. And this is what got us here. This is what got us here. Let's look at some of your comments so far. Strong, independent. Opus asks, do you know anything about a court case against Disney for the destruction of the Star Wars IP? I don't. If it's pending, I haven't seen it. Oh my god, I just got it. I like how Jayne doesn't use your username as intended. I literally just got it. Microsoft. Microsoft should buy the movie and game rights to screw Amazon over. Oh my god. That would be hilarious. If they buy all of Token's works, just kill me now. I feel like they will. I feel like they will. Technically, Warner Brothers still has some rights. Okay, and that is the debate. Are they going to sue? Because according to um the current owner, they feel like it reverted those rights reverted back to them last year. That's why they're putting it up for sale. So we'll see if there's a lawsuit that comes out of that. Oh my god. Elon Musk, if he purchased that, oh, he would be perfect. Oh, let's see. Michael Beacom says, Jane Theory, when I saw your headline that Lord of the Rings was up for sale, I literally started screaming and slamming my fist. Well, I thought I was injured or something. And actually, yes, I was inside. I know when I saw that, I was like, oh, oh no, oh no. Oh, it's about to get so bad. BK Panther just got a quick history lesson from Jane Theory. That was cool and enlightening. I'm glad it was. I love talking about that stuff. What Amazon is doing to Lord of the Rings is absurd and a waste of money. It is. Bree says, I don't understand wanting to diversify fantasy. I just don't understand why they pick Lord of the Rings. It's literally based on Norse and English folklore. There's no respect for Tolkien. Oh, we're going to get into it. Somebody said Galadriel of Tarth. Oh my god. That is so freaking true. Not only that, Monkey Jeebus, Lord of the Rings series is not connected to the movies at all. It's technically, I don't even see how it's connected to the books, honestly, because they're saying they're writing the novel he did, and there's some weird thing they said. So I would argue it's a completely different thing. So what's the point? Like, why are you calling it Lord of the Rings? Okay, so let's get into the verge of simping for Elon. Okay, so let's go through this briefly through this article. So they start with Galadriel, right? Why we're even doing this with her, I don't know. This is not what you imagine when you think of her, or any else for that matter. Like, they're supposed to be otherworldly. They're supposed to be. This is so mundane. Even this scene, we don't even know what's happening, but we know that it doesn't fit, right? Like, it just doesn't feel right. Albert says it doesn't really matter if it's not the same universe as the movies. People are still going to make the connection. They want us to make the connection. And look at this. Look at this image. Like, what are we doing here? What are we. How are we having this conversation? So, someone said, let me pull it up. I want to know how we got here because one of the. Oh, we haven't even gotten to Elrond yet, but there's an image of him too. It's very, like, petite and frankly quite feminine. But this is what the OneRing.com, not to be confused with the OneRing.net, had to say. Elrond, the herald of Gil-galad, who fought in the last alliance, is now a canny architect. Galadriel, who never fought in the War of the Wrath or Last Alliance, is now a commander of armies. It's the woke rewriting of Tolkien into beta males and alpha females. That's exactly what this is. It's reversing everything. It's turning everything on its head. It's the gender thing we were talking about earlier. Where you would literally, the two of them should be in each other's scene. Like, these should be completely switched. It's like, and they know it. They know exactly what they're doing. How did we get here? From this. Like, how do we get to here from here? Can someone explain? It's, you take characters who are, in many ways, high feminine, like, in not just inherently feminine, but almost to another level. And you decide, you know what? No. Just gonna throw this away. I'm gonna throw this whole look away because it's too feminine. We need women in armor, metal, and swords and fighting. Like, that's How did we get here? How did we get here? Look at these beautiful gowns. My god, the costume design was amazing. Ronan says the biggest issue with all this is they're saying these female characters aren't powerful unless they do things like men characters. That's a horrible take for women. It is. Carlos says by design they did this. Rasmain says Elrond Galadriel switch agenda confirmed. How do you look at these costumes and say no? We reject that and insert our own reality. John Ware says they want to have the new Game of Thrones a fantasy watercolor series. The lightning and color palette looks like the gritty Game of Thrones instead of the enchanting bloom of the Lord of the Rings movies. Honestly, I wouldn't even give them credit of Game of Thrones. I would say it looks like a CW show. That's it. How did we get here? Galadriel would never. Would never. I don't. Wow. And Galadriel was extremely powerful. What this reminds me of to some degree is Lady Jessica in Dune and how there was more. Now, they didn't do it in the movie, but initially they were marketing it as if they were transforming her into this sort of warrior queen thing. And they didn't do it, they didn't go there, at least not yet. But I was concerned because this is a woman very much like Galadriel in that their power, their strength is extreme. It's god tier, but it's subtle in how they choose to use it, and it's subtle in how they tend to express it. It's like you know they're lethal when you're in their presence. They don't have to don armor and have a sword and go out and fight like the men folk, you know? It's like they don't have to do that. Canadian Rebel says it looks like a lot like the Witcher series. Exactly. And only worse. Only worse. And I mean, Elrond. Well, first of all, I think they're kind of also going for this look. They're going for the this terrible. I think this is also maybe where they're going with it. But let's take a look at Elrond. Let me scroll down because it gets worse. So this is what they did here, right? And let me get down before we even get to that. This is the new Elrond. Like, I don't even what is with his hair too, because it's blonde. It looks blonde. It could be the lighting. But he has dark hair. Like, it's even noted as much. I don't is this perhaps the first instance of, like, brunette washing? I don't know. I don't know. She's wearing blinds. So this is the Elrond we get. This is what they did. This is the best they could come up with versus looks more like baby Legolas, says Monkey Jeepus. Oh my god. Look at this. How? How did we get there? Can someone explain to me? What are we doing? God, look at how good this was. Oh, God, the costume was amazing too. That's Elrond, man. Not this. Not this. How do we see? This is what I was expecting. I was expecting, you know, Elrond's in the armor. But God forbid we have a man looking like a man, like doing manly things. Rosman says they're going to retcon that Galadriel taught Elrond to fight. You can believe it. You can believe she's going to be out there training the men. Okay, so let's get to the most controversial topic. Let's get to the even more controversial aspect of this craziness. Because we also have this romance, the forbidden romance, with the quote unquote black elf, reasons I don't know, and this girl, and I don't know what she is, but it's forbidden. But let's scroll up and let's look at him more closely, or at least one of them, I guess. I don't know. They all look the same. All the black people look alike. Okay, so here we go. Here we go. Canadian Rebel says the original Lord of the Rings movies age like wine. This dumpster fire will age like milk. Can someone explain to me why they chose to do this? Checking boxes doesn't work. It's not going to get anybody's attention. It's not going to make anybody interested in watching the show. Because black people are already fans of this series. They're already fans of the show. They're already fans of the books. You didn't have to do this insertion thing that they do. And it's funny that they would go with the female dwarf. They said, you know what? We're going to put a black woman in this. Okay? We're going to do that. We're going to promote her. But how we're going to do it is we're going to make her a dwarf of all things. I mean, if you're going to do it, why would you pick dwarf of all things? But last year, they were calling people racist when they were comparing black people to orcs. This is where we are. Oh my God. Potter Stark says at least HBO didn't ruin Caitlin Stark. In fact, they made her better than she was in the books. They made her much more of a mother. Because in the book, she's terrible. Canadian Rebel says, where's the beard on the female dwarf? Exactly. She doesn't look like a dwarf. She should look, if you're going to do this, why not make her actually look like a dwarf? If you're gonna go there, go all the way. Peanuts says, hold on a sec. Are they inserting black characters in all races except humans? We haven't seen any humans yet. So far, this is it. You may be right. And if that is the case, that would be so freaking racist. Because if you're going to do it, like, you know, I think we talked about, where did I talk about this? Maybe on Twitter. You do have dark-skinned people in the universe. Like, you could have cast them as those people. But instead, no, this is what we do. Dwarves and elves. And then here's the thing. The elves, again, they're supposed to look otherworldly. And I'm going to say this. I didn't necessarily like how they were portrayed in Lord of the Rings. All of, you know, like, not all of them, but like the background elves, like these, looked weird. They looked weird. The wigs weren't that great. The makeup wasn't that great. They frankly shouldn't have been blonde. They should have had dark hair. But they tried. I don't even think they tried here. Why does he look like this? Why does he look like regular black dude from the hood or wherever? I shouldn't say that. It's terrible. Now here's the thing. You do have people who are cosplayers who've done a decent job of doing the dwarf look. Like this girl. She's playing a dwarf, or she's cosplaying as a dwarf. And look at her. I could buy this. She has a little face stuff, little stubble, whatever, little hair on her chin. But again, it's like cosplayers do it better. It's like we're back to that. You have the biggest budget. You could do anything. And you just say, nah, we're not even going to try. This is insane. That is why I said when I saw the pictures, it looks cheap. It looks so cheap what they're doing. That is a really good dwarf. And the funny thing is, if you saw her with the other dwarfs, you wouldn't necessarily notice her race because she kind of looks like the dwarves. They're hairy. They're super hairy. You're not really supposed to be able to tell that much about them. But no, they go the PC woke route, of course, and it just looks terrible. And the thing about it, we also know that they expected the backlash. If anything, I think they intentionally provoked it for attention. One, I think they do it for attention. The other thing I think they do it for is cover. Because as Nerdrotic has said time and time again, they are trying to shield themselves from attack. When we come out and we're critical of this show because it looks like trash so far, the first thing they come to is, well, you're racist. You're mad because there's diversity. You're mad because there's homosexuality or whatever they're trying to include in here. You're just an ist. You're just a phobe. No, you're just crazy because you didn't do it right. It's not well done. Just aesthetically, it looks terrible. Even if you do your retcon race swapping thing, I still see cosplayers who do it better. The costumes look terrible across the board. Each scene looks fake and cheap. What do you want us to say? Like, what did you really expect from us? You expected criticism because you knew it was going to be a mediocre mess. You knew it was going to be trash. You knew you were going to trash the lore, and you knew that what you produced was going to be an inferior product across the board. You knew it. So you put Black people in particular at the forefront to shield you from the brunt of the attack. And you're still going to lose money because even if we decide to say nothing, like even if our entire community said, you know what, we're just going to ignore them, pretty much like we did the new Star Trek, just not even talk about it. I mean, you wouldn't get any attention and no one would watch your show. It's not, I mean, we can either be critical openly so that you can get some sort of feedback and know what you're doing wrong, or we can ignore you and you just fail basically. And you don't even know why. So which would you prefer? It's not even good. That's what I can't. And so one of the things I said, one of the things that was talked about early on in terms of criticism, and this sort of gets us back to the race conversation. Let me pull up this perfect comment to transition. Someone said there are people who love this diversity stuff though. So here's the thing. For me personally, because I know some people say, okay, look, this is inspired by medieval Europe. So the people should be white. I don't entirely disagree, but here's the point I made in a post on Twitter. Oh, wait, let me do this real quick. So this is the post I made on Twitter. For me, And this is not defending what they've done, but I just want to put something in context. The mere appearance, this is what I said, the mere appearance of dark skin in medieval Europe inspired Lord of the Rings by itself isn't my issue. We see that in the era's art from time to time. What bothers me is that they're casting people contrary to how they're described in the lore, and their marketing promotes race over character. That's how I feel about it. I don't care that you decided you're going to have some brown people around. I do think it's a problem that so much of our perception of history is rooted in Hollywood and what Hollywood has created and what Hollywood has produced in terms of what we see. I think it's fair to say, there are more brown skinned people in medieval art than there is in medieval or representations of medieval society by Hollywood. It's given us this perception that there weren't any black people there. And that's simply not true. But and that's why it doesn't bother me to just see them there, just existing in some way. But when you start the race swapping, when you start inserting characters unnecessarily, and especially in contrary to the lore of the material you're working with, that is where I have a problem. And where you're doing it to promote a particular agenda or to save yourself from being criticized, that is where I have a problem. It can be done well on occasion, but in this case, it's not subtle, it's not respectful. And it just comes across as if you're exploiting these actors specifically because of their race. You're not even in these write-ups about this series. They're not talking about the story. They're not talking about the action. They're not talking about the world. They're not talking about what we're going to see. They're not talking about the plot. We don't know what this is even about, but we know there's a black dwarf and a black elf. How is that your lead? And you wonder why people are critical, including black people. This is why. And it's just like with Game of Thrones. When we saw that they were casting black people for the prequel that didn't happen, many people thought, oh, great. We're going to see Sitharios. We're going to see the Summer Isles. We'll see some part of Essos. Like, this is going to be a great opportunity that they're going to expand on the world and we'll see the rest of what's out there. They had an opportunity to do that with Game of Thrones. And instead, they said, no, we're going to race swap Corlys. We're going to race swap Corlys Valerian. It makes absolutely no sense. And it's the same situation here. Tolkien created a world. There are brown people in it. Why not just cast these people as those people? Why not? Oh, here's an idea. Here's an idea. Why not set your story where those people are? I mean, you could have all the diversity you want then. No one would say anything. In fact, I would argue that fans would be excited. Most fans would say, oh, this is going to be great. We're going to get to explore a different part of the world that Tolkien has created. We'll get to see more interactions. We'll see what was happening between Gondor and these other people. Well, it's going to be fascinating. Because there were other things happening outside of the parts of the books that have been adapted to date. We could talk about those. Could be fun. Could get people engaged again. Get people reading the books. But no, they said, no, we don't want to do that. We'll just forget it. Forget that. Theodore Pinnock says, yeah, tell us about the Hard Gem. No, you don't get that. Because you're a fan and we hate you. They refuse to do it. It's absurd. So this is essentially what we're left with. Opus says Dune did the gender swap thing and it worked pretty okay. They did it well. It can. There are times when I will give them credit for thinking about the story and thinking about why they're making decisions. And when a decision to change something is rooted in a genuinely good reason, and I forget off the top of my head what it was. I think it was, um, God, I forgot. I forgot why they decided to race swap her. There was an explanation though that actually made sense. Why they decided to gender swap her, I mean. But I actually liked it. I liked her femininity, which did come across, and how it played into her being a doctor and how she was taking care of them. Sort of this nurturing aspect became more apparent. There are ways to do it. You can look at a character in a story and say, okay, we can make this small change. We can make this change because it adds to the character and it adds to the story in a unique way. Not that takes away from it, but that amplifies the moment. We saw subtle changes like this in The Expanse as well, where a lot of people are saying of the early seasons, it was better than the books. Game of Thrones is another example where the characters looked absolutely nothing. Like they look nothing like described in the books to the point where you almost have to think of them separately. And yet it worked. And you could enjoy, even though in your head you knew they looked different, you could still enjoy it for what. Now, there were some subtle changes that I felt they shouldn't have done with the characters in terms of casting. Like Rob, I think his having red hair was kind of important. That I mean, it was sort of to emphasize his Tully side and his Tully personality and some of the decisions that he was making being more reflective of his mother than his father. Um, People forget that when writers create characters and their look, oftentimes there is meaning there. And when you erase it or change it, you have to be mindful of that. Otherwise, it can get lost. I think they made up for it in other ways, but I do think that instance of gender ginger gender ginger erasure erased a certain subtlety in his character. Um, but it was more than made up for in his relationship with his mother. So they did a good job. But that's what you have if you're a writer and you respect the lore and you respect the product that you're working with, the original material, even when you decide as a creative, I'm going to take some license, I'm going to make some decisions, I'm going to change some things. You can do it in respect of the context of the situation the character finds themselves in and your love for the character and the author's intent. And you can balance those changes out. You can make it work if you put in the effort. The problem here is that they don't even do that. They don't even do that. It's just like Elrond. The changes they make aren't subtle. You know, Galadriel even. It's not subtle. They don't care about the original character. They literally believe that the original character was wrong. He shouldn't have been so masculine and strong and sort of a traditional male archetype. She shouldn't have been so feminine. If she's a strong woman, then she should be like a man. Like, these are their ideas. They don't like these characters. They hate Luke. They hate Star Wars. They hate Lord of the Rings. They don't love it. These aren't fans who are creating this stuff. They believe they can fix it because it was fundamentally wrong. It was fundamentally racist or sexist or misogynist or whatever. And they make these changes with the intent of destroying the original. That is their whole point. And we see it and we call them out on it. And their only pushback is, "Oh, you're racist, you're misogynist," because that's what they think of the original material. That's why if you don't like The Last Jedi, you're automatically a white supremacist. no matter what color you are, because that is their perception of Star Wars. It's int These people are crazy. Like Linzer said, focusing on fixing instead of creating results in destroying. Exactly. Exactly. And that's the thing, Ronan, that I find interesting. They're going to hide behind the progressive changes. Call it progressive. It's a smokescreen. It is. Because oftentimes what they're doing is insulting to the very people they're taking it upon themselves to white knight. Like, this is insulting the black people in the worst way. If anything, seriously, they could have decided that they were going to focus on the brown skinned people in Tolkien's world, and they rejected them wholesale. How do you think black people should feel about that? Because it's not like we don't know they exist. Same thing with Game of Thrones. You race swap Corlys as if we don't know the Summer Isles are there. Like we don't know that you're ignoring the part of the world where there are people who look like us. And we're supposed to just be happy. Like, what are you doing? But this is their logic. They don't care. They don't really care about any of it. They don't care about substance. They don't care about writing. They don't care about production design or cost. Look at these costumes. My God. Compare these costumes to what we just saw earlier. What is even happening? I think I could have made better costumes than this. And I'm not even a cosplayer. Like, I could have done a better job. Look at her wig. Okay, so here's a question. You cast a black woman. Why does her hair look like this? It's like, you cast a black woman, but you give her all of this like straight hair. Why? His hair looks curlier than hers. His hair is frizzier than hers. It's also uneven. Oh my God. It is. Generic fantasy outfits. It looks terrible. It looks like something from the CW. Look at that cheap looking gold. It looks plastic. It looks like something you got at the dollar store. Theodore Pinnock says they just look like Oh, wait, wrong one. I've seen this picture at least 100 times and never noticed. The jury looks so fake. It does. It's just terrible. Vin Dowdy says they had salons back then. Oh my God. Yeah, only the black elves have a good barber. Look at his hair. Okay, then that's the other thing. Okay, so he's the one who should have the wig. Like, see, that's what's so crazy. If she's a dwarf, then the traditional sort of bushy, big, curly hair that black people have would actually fit better for her. And the long, straight wig would fit better for him, the elf. It's all backwards. Yep, Mitch. That's the insanity of race. That's the insanity of it all. Too many Doritos. They do. I saw that meme. There's a meme where they put Doritos where all those triangles are and then put a bag of Doritos in her hands. It took me out when I saw that. John Big Y'all are killing me with these names. Said the dwarven character is not a black woman. No dwarves dwell in sub-Saharan Africa. She's simply a dwarf with dark skin. Mm, we can go with that. This is so bad. I think that costuming lady should have done a better job. Like that literally looked like that looks like an outfit from Ross's. Do y'all have Ross where y'all are? Where they have like I don't know what you call it, like cheap clothes from that the main department stores have just sent over. Their overstock supply, basically. That's what this looks like. It's terrible. Okay, do this out. They don't care. It would have been cool, but they don't care. John Ware Jr. says Ross is across the street from me in Vegas. It's a $1 billion production. They could do better. Clearly, it didn't go to costume design. It also didn't go to casting. I don't know where the money went. TJ Maxx. Maybe Target. It's terrible. And let's see if they have any other pictures. Because I just don't know. I don't know what to do with that. Then you have this scene. Ugh, this doesn't even look. I thought this was a different movie, like or a different show. It just looks so fake. Looks terrible. Look at those bricks. They don't even look right. The trees don't look right. None of it looks right. It just looks. It's so fake looking. This doesn't look like a lived-in world. What are we doing here? Look at his hair. And again, this outfit, this dress looks like drapes. It looks like something. How did the costumes get worse this far in the future? Like, I don't understand. Borg Porg with a $2 super chat. Thank you. He said, did anyone talk about the new South Park episode? No. What new South Park episode? What's it about? I have not seen it. Thank you for the super chat, though. This is so terrible. This literally looks like she's wearing curtains. It's not beautiful and delicate. See, that's the other thing, too. Elven clothing is supposed to be very as delicate, really, as they appear. It's very beautiful. It's very ethereal. And this is not that. God, this looks terrible. And I don't know what's happening here. This girl, in every scene she's in that we've seen of her, she's in the same pose. They do something different. Ugh, I don't even want to. Behind the scenes. What is with the wigs in this show? His hair looks terrible too. Let me go back up. I know there was something else. I think that may be it, maybe. Okay, that's it. So that's the preview they gave us. Show the guy with the t-shirt? Okay. Nice t-shirt. Oops. Yeah, this is Halbrand, a new character. He's a fugitive from his own past. Southeastern Kaiju said Scarlett O'Hara straight from Gone with the Wind. Exactly. Nice t-shirt. Look at it. Oh my gosh. Looks like a cologne ad. A t-shirt for crying out loud. Aragorn insert. Exactly, Rasmain. Canadian Rebel says, I think I have that shirt in my closet. Monkey Jima says he's looking for the Folgers. Oh, Daniel Matthews says, when you have an Armani budget, but go to Target instead. It does look like a cologne ad. Dollar store Aragon. Aragorn. Oh my god, this is bad. He's supposed to be in deep thought. We're supposed to care about him, I guess. I don't see it. Nick McCabe says the elves are meant to look ethereal and thoroughly non-human. Exactly. Now they just look ordinary. Even a muck-covered Elrond looked grand, but now cheap. Exactly. And that was my issue too with Game of Thrones and the Targaryens. They were supposed to look very otherworldly too, and they just look like Lannisters, basically. Ronan Recontor says, like, why did I take this part? he's, he's on a medieval toilet. The best part of waking up is when was bread in your cup. Pensive. The MASH t-shirts. Oh my god, it looks like that. This is terrible. Oh. Again, anybody can make this shirt. Anybody. A fugitive in 20. See, I thought that too. Boromir was kind of what I was thinking when I saw this. He was supposed to be an ancestor for him. Is he? Oh my god. See, that was my concern too. When they start creating all of these new characters, it's like they're inserting them into the past to affect what we've seen so far means. And we see the same strategy with Star Wars. Looking like Pearl Jam. Middle Earth Marlboro Man. Oh my gosh. Amazon tribute to the thinker updated for woke times. Oh my gosh. This is what they've done with Lord of the Rings. This is what they've done with it. My gosh. So yeah, that is what they've done. Okay, I want to before we end the stream because I want to end it there. I'm just that is enough to drive you nuts. I want to highlight a couple of milestones. 4,000 subscribers. Couldn't do it without you guys. And I know a lot of you, probably the vast overwhelming majority, came over from Az's channel. So thank you and welcome. But yay, 4,000. Thank you. That is absolutely amazing. And one more thing I want to highlight is 250,000 views. Woo! Thank you guys. Again, couldn't have done it without you all. Y'all are amazing. Thank you so much. I do wanna let you know, I do have a Twitch channel. If y'all are on Twitch, anybody on Twitch, I play Fortnite from time to time. It's a little fun. Sometimes some other games, but mainly Fortnite. And I also am on Spotify. Jayne Theory. I'm on there. Check that out. Basically, there are these videos, except you can listen to them. That's it. That's the only thing. And I also have a channel, Feast and Festival. And in my description, there's a link tree, so you can have the links to all of these if you want to check them out. Feast and Festival is mainly a travel and food channel. I put some things up from my last trip to Hawaii and some local things. And I have a trip coming up to Iceland if all goes well. So look forward to that. Definitely subscribe so that you can get the latest on that trip. It's going to be amazing. I can't wait. And I'm making some things for Mardi Gras, so we'll see about that. As far as these streams are concerned, they're not regular. They're not regular. They're basically whenever I can do it. But I oh, thank you guys. But I'm gonna try to do at least one a month because this is so much fun. I love talking with you guys and just hanging out. Theodore Panic says this was the first thing of yours I've watched. I really enjoyed it. Oh, I'm so glad. So long, I love Naomi. Thank you. So y'all, thank you guys for coming. Everybody, I hope you have a great Saturday, a great weekend, and a great week. 22 has been an insane year so far. It's been a long year, but hopefully it gets better for everybody. Again, thank you for coming. Thank you for hanging out. And I will see you next time. Bye, guys.